Hi everyone, Jerry Regan here from the wildgeese.com with a new broadcast for the Wild Geese TV. We have on the line, audio only, Ann Matthews from Ann, are you talking to us from Kildare, your home? Or are you in Dublin? Where exactly are you?
I'm talking to you from Selbridge in Kildare, my home.
Okay, well, Kate Neal Fulcher, of course, to the Wild Geese TV. Ann is a historian. She's currently a professor at NUI Maynooth. Is that right, Ann?
That's right, I am, yes.
And you grew up in the working class area of North. What that section of Dublin? It's called North Wall, right?
North Wall, yes.
North Wall.
I did.
Okay, so you've got a very strong affinity, I think, for working class experience, and of course we
yes, yes, I do. Yes.
You've broadened yourself from a purely academic career, and recently blazed a new path for yourself as a playwright, and you've got a play on the boards now, and it's called very simply Lockout. So
yes.
Tell us briefly what's the premise of Lockout?
Well, Lockout was a labour conflict in Dublin in 1913, when the union, the transport union, and employers conflict came to a head, and a strike began in late August. And then by the early September, the employers locked out the rest of the labourers. Now, they were unskilled workers. This union looked after unskilled labour. And this is the centenary, and there's a lot of very little has been written on the history of this conflict. Irish historians tend to ignore working class history, so there's very little on it. And a lot of the commemoration this year is centred on a novel, a fiction novel called Trumpet City. But Dublin City Archive then produced a book of essays, and I contributed to it. And my contribution was exploring the women and children of Dublin, and the working class women, the wives and children of the men who were locked out, and how they were fed during those 2 months. Because once the men were locked out, they had absolutely no income at all. Overnight, no money. And they were already badly paid, and they were already poor, and the situation became worse. And when I wrote the piece for the book on this, Anthony Fox, the director of the New Theatre, invited me to write a play, because I had written a script for something else, and he said he felt I could write a script. So my grandfather was a locked-out worker, and my granny, who was the lady on the poster, that's my grandmother, Ellen Byrne, who was born in 1882. And in that poster, she's 27, and that photograph was taken in 1909. And I used her as the conduit to tell the story of the wives and the children and how they survived the lockout. So essentially, the play is my grandmother's story, overlaid with historical fact. And then I have the speeches of Connolly and Larkin. So on the stage, there are 3 actors. One is the actors, the female lead is my grandmother, Ellen Byrne, and the 2 actors using some speeches of Larkin and Connolly to blend in with the story she's telling.
So,
and that's essentially what the play is about.
And does Ellen respond or interact with James Larkin and James Connolly in the course of the
she is
production?
the narrator. It's her personal story, and the opening is simply. I sent you a photograph. I took a photograph of the opening scene. The opening scene is the stage is dark and there's a candle on a table. Now, I can't tell you about the play because it would spoil the story, but it opens with a candle on a table, and it's set in a tenement building, a tenement room, which is bare, except for this table, 3 chairs, and the candle on the table. So when it opens, everything goes into darkness. There's just this darkness and a solitary candle lighting on the table, and that's the opening. And it starts with Ellen's story, who she is, where she came from, her meeting my granddad, her marriage, her personal life, and then it interweaves with Connolly coming and my grandfather joining the union, and our story goes through all of that, the personal of her husband joining the union, the conversations he had with him, the experiences they had during the union, the speeches of Connolly and Larkin, and how the speeches of Connolly and Larkin are interwoven through her story, but she doesn't have conversations with him. Someone told me it's a very new way of doing something. But and when Connolly comes on stage, the light darkens on Ellen, and Ellen is not visible to the audience. She simply goes into the darkness, and the light highlights 2 speakers every time they talk.
So
and then it takes us through the speeches of Larkin Connolly and Ellen's story. We take the audience through the story of the lockout itself, what the conflict was about, and how these women, who fed these women and children.
So the presumption is then, and that Ellen was, like many working class Dubliners at the time, was profoundly influenced by the speeches of Connolly and Larkin, by their own activism. Yeah.
Well, not the women so much as the men. The men were influenced by the activism of Connolly and Larkin and by the speeches, and the idea that Larkin, when he came to Dublin, he arrived like a whirlwind and to unskilled labour, and the speeches, and many of them came to believe that their lives were going to be improved by being involved with this man and joining the union, and that there was a better world ahead. And so this influence this conversations would have taken places in tenement rooms, and I am assuming, like my mother, that my grandmother was an intelligent woman, because her survival of the lockout and the fact that I'm her granddaughter indicates to me she was an intelligent woman. And there were many women who are absorbing the story of Connolly and Larkin and lockout and labour and class conflict. They lived class conflict. They lived it because they were working class people. And they were at the lower end of the class system, so they lived through all the problems of class.
Did you get to know?
At the lower, sorry.
Did you get to know your grandmother Ellen Byrne?
My grandmother was 4.5, and I was 4.5 when my grandmother died. But my 3 earliest memories are of my granny. But my mother was born in 1909, so she was a child, and some of the things that happened, which were very dramatic, my mother remembered. But I absorbed the stories of the lockout. I always say by osmosis, but I absorbed it through my mother's milk, because my mother was a talker, and my mother told us the story. So before I even came to college as a mature student, I knew the story of the lockout. But I always avoided the story of the lockout because, looking back now, it was too emotional for me. But when I was asked to write the chapter for the book, I had to tackle it head on. And I found writing that emotional. And then writing the play, I found very cathartic, because I was carrying my mother. I realised now as an adult, my mother carried her mother's pain, and I carried my mother's pain. And now I put it down by writing the play.
I noticed in a very strong review that the play received that the opening of the play features Ellen mourning the loss of a loved one, and the reviewer didn't identify the loved one. Would it be a spoiler for you to say who Ellen was?
Yeah, yeah. She lost more than one loved one, and it would be a spoiler to tell you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, it would be a spoiler. Right. It would be an absolute spoiler. So the thing is, there's a candle on the stage and there's a coffin. And she didn't say anything about it either. It would be a spoiler, because the play is just an hour. It's very intense, very intense. And an hour is long enough. People would not be able to handle more than the hour. It's a very, very hard play. It's in its intensity. And no, I can't. Okay. It would totally spoil the play.
It's a one-act play, I gather, then?
It's a one-act play, yes. I mean, it could be made into a two-act play, but I think a two-act play would take it to 1916, and I think that's a bigger stage, that's a bigger theatre company. This theatre company doesn't have lots of money. And when I started to write it, I started out with 5 characters, and they told me they could only afford to pay 3 actors. So, so the play was dictated by economy as much as anything else. But I could write a huge story with a cast of thousands, but it wouldn't, this just works.
Well, all right, so I understand that the run is sold out. Is there an opportunity for anyone within shouting distance of Dublin to get in to see the production, a waiting list perhaps?
Well, it finishes tomorrow night. It's been off the week, but the new theatre are planning on having a rerun. Now, I don't know, I haven't seen them for a few days. I don't want to torment them because they're going through a week. And watching actors is an amazing thing, and watching the director and the whole lot. So, but next week I know I will talk to him. But I sent him an email. Somebody emailed me wanting to know could they have the show in their theatre, and I passed it on to Anthony, and he simply said there's going to be a rerun. So when we have the rerun, I will let you know. And it would be nice if it went places, because it's a story of working class Dublin, and nobody's ever looked at it from this perspective before.
A couple of quick questions. I noticed, according to the photograph, at least in the papers, that you've placed, or the director has placed, Larkin on stage left and Connolly on stage right. And is there any kind of inference that in fact Larkin stood to the left of Connolly in the realm of politics?
No, it's to do with it. It's like I said, it's a small theatre, and it's a small stage, and it was the logistics of having the actors in isolation, so you couldn't have them coming out the same door. So that and when the actor playing Larkin comes in, he stands. The light comes on him, and the rest of the stage is dark, and that's his spot. And he talks from there, and you couldn't have both of them coming from the same door. It wouldn't work. So each side, and then at one stage we have a reporter. So we have an actor doing a reporter as well, and he comes from stage right. But the left and right of the stage is not relevant to politics.
Oh, okay, yeah, we're always looking for hidden meanings.
If you go into the New Theatre, website, they have some of the photographs of the actors on their website, and you can have a look at it. Some of the photographs are brilliant.
Well, you know, I noticed that a number of commentators were looking for a morality tale based on the events in Ireland in the past decade.
Sorry, they were looking for?
Yeah, well, I think I saw at least one commentator suggest that the events of 1913 are richly relevant to the bust of the Celtic Tiger that Ireland has experienced in the past 10 years. That there's a lot of lessons that can be extracted. Were you inspired yourself to revisit this by?
No, I don't. I don't buy that. No, I don't buy that. That's somebody looking at 2013 and trying to take something from 1913 to make it relevant to today. Completely different world, completely different life, completely different way of living. And the only thing that I can see that 2013 has in common with 1913 is that the charities in the city are feeding over 100,000 people. Every day, the charities in this city, or every year, last year they produced over 100,000 meals, and they'll be doing the same again this year. That is the only thing I see to compare with 1913. The politics is different, the world is different, even the poverty takes on a different hue. It's very different, and it can't be compared to today. And I think the commentator, whoever it was who said that, because there's such a history lacking on the 1913 lockout, there's a tendency to misrepresent. But the poverty of 1913 bears absolutely no resemblance to the poverty being affected by the current recession. There is not a comparison. It can't be. You can't compare them.
Just one last quick question. Yeah. What's your sense of William Martin Murphy? Does he deserve opprobrium, or would you say he's really just a victim of his circumstances?
Yeah, I tend to do. You see, I have a bit of a stand. You see, what I do is I stand back from Connolly and Larkin as well. I think Connolly and Larkin, just as Connolly was a victim of the circumstances of 1916, and when the lockout failed, and it did fail, Connolly Larkin was a victim of that failure. He helped create the failure, but he was a victim of the failure. And William Martin Murphy is presented as like the bogeyman. For those of you who are Irish, you know what the bogeyman is. He is the bogeyman of the lockout. But the book that was published, there's a new chapter, and they talk about William Martin Murphy. Now, I haven't read that chapter yet, but when I get around to reading that chapter, I'll be able to answer your question better, you know, because I don't buy the bogeyman thing, but I need to know more than I know now to be able to answer your question adequately. So the book is called A Capital in Conflict, and if people want to search Google for it, it's a book of 10 essays, 10 different historians, and it's the most comprehensive history of the lockout that has been done in 100 years.
Oh, we'll try to add that link to our page with this interview.
Yeah.
All right, so like I know you've got a huge amount of things going on. I would just urge listeners to check out to the degree you can either this weekend run if you can somehow squeeze in or extort tickets from someone of influence, or wait for the run to be extended or popped up again somewhere down the weeks. The play is called Lockout. It's directed by Aidan Fox and written by
it's Anthony Fox.
Anthony Fox. Thank you for the correction. Yeah. And written by of course Ann Matthews is our guest here. It's on the boards for 3 more days: tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday.
Saturday, yes.
And 3 more performances in Dublin's New Theatre. All right, tickets if they can be had are 12 and 15 euros. All right. So,
but if people keep ringing, they will definitely bring it back. They are going to bring it back because the number of people looking to see it, I think, is one of the reasons they're going to do another run.
well, and that's certainly welcome news, and it's obviously found an approving audience. Well, all right, Ann. So I'll let you bound away to your preparations for tonight's performance and
okay.
Round
Thanks a million. And listen, I will try and I have a feeling before you go. When I put up my webcam, just when yourself and Alana were having a dialogue, I heard her mention Skype, and I think I might have a problem with my camera and my Skype settings. I think I might have a problem with them, so I'm going to figure them out over the weekend.
Well, duly noted. We'll definitely look forward to having you back.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks
and thanks
a lot,
for the opportunity. Okay.
Best
Take
of
care.
luck. Bye.
Bye.